Alright, I'm shooting a video for the Vintage Open. This will be like a basic walkthrough of these holes. So I haven't gone in and played any of the Vineyard Acres. I think this is going to be Tour 4. So yeah, it'll be in Tours 4 and 8 through Thursday. So we can play in Tour 4 and get some of these Vineyard Acre holes and start playing them. But just like a basic walkthrough, going through it. And then I'm going to go through my notes after I do this and look at where these holes have been at in past tournaments and pull up some of my notes so that I can get a basic setup on it and a start. And then I'll start playing some of the holes, and I'll try and post some videos throughout the week. Hopefully I can get some holes between now and when they stop letting us play them on Thursday, and post some of those. And then on Monday I'll post around. Monday I'll try and have a roundup Monday evening, Tuesday morning. When you get up, you can check it out. I encourage you to use Monday as a practice, to practice if you can. If you really feel like you're on and like the first few holes you get up a shot or something and you stick with it. But if it's not looking like that's how it's going to turn out, it's always best to try and get at least one good day of practice in to work the notes. And hopefully the videos will help. So the holes here are in this Vintage Open are all on Vineyard Acres, but they're not in the same order that Vineyard Acres is actually in. So we still have all 9 holes, but they're in just a different order. So hole number 1 in the tournament is actually going to be hole number 3 in the Vineyard Acres. So if you're looking for it, it's actually hole number 3 in Vineyard Acres. I wish that in Golf Clash Notebook, when they did the tournaments, that they actually, down at the bottom where they list all of the tournaments that this has been in, that they actually listed here that this is a regular hole in Tour 6 in Vineyard Acres, or Tour 4 in Vineyard Acres, Tour 8 in Vineyard Acres, so that you knew where it was, so you could cross-reference these holes a little bit more, especially if you're looking for notes or videos from people, so you don't have to do as much legwork. So hole number 1. So this hole right here is a par 4 that you can be on in one. So the whole goal here is to get up here and to be on in one. And there really is 2 ways where you can bounce over on the black line, or you can try and hit it over. And it really is going to depend on the wind on whether you can hit it over or not. What I've found in my experience is that this is a hole that lends itself to putting on curl. So if you come down into this spot and you're trying to curl it to here, you don't have any room out here for curl. So if you're going to use curl, you need to come up to here where the white line is, and you need to follow the white line. If you're trying to hit it straight at it without curl, then the black line's the way to go. But if your shot involves any kind of curl, you need to be up here. And really, where they have this line is very nice, because usually I'm aiming up in this spot, and the ball carries here. It carries farther. So like if we're getting, if you're getting this kind of wind, it's going to push it back farther than you think. If we're getting this kind of wind or this kind of wind, it's going to carry it farther, and it's very easy to end up getting carried too far down into this rough area and end up in the rough. So if we can avoid it, the goal here would be to bring the ball that we need to get us the bounce over, either with the shot over, if we're having to hit on this side, we bring the ball that's going to get us up far enough up here that we don't have to do any overpower, so we can adjust just the wind. But if we can get over, the goal is to get over, and then you're going to get over and you're not actually going to use all of your stuff. You're going to have to woe it up, otherwise it'll blow past the green and you'll end up over here. So there's a fine line between getting over and then being able to hold that onto the green. So you're not going to have to use all of your topspin or all of your stuff. But I definitely find that the white line's better, because what you're going to find is if you're on the white line, you hit it great on the inside, you're pushing yourself back over here where the black line's at. So you always want to make sure you leave yourself enough room that if you hit great on the inside, you don't clip this rough. But if you hit it great on the outside, it still ends up here, right on the fringe. And if it's perfect, it's right up here on the cup, and you got a putt, and you're going home. So this is all going to be, once the tournament starts and we find out what kind of wind we have, this is all going to be, and this is a very tricky shot. You know, so the more variables that we can take out. So if we can take out just the wind and we bring a big enough ball so that we don't have to do any overpower. Power is a huge variable. And if we do an overpower shot, are we doing an overpower shot but we're taking the wind out because we want to be very precise on where we hit? You know, like, you know, what's the deal on it? So we're going to have to practice that throughout the week. But the goal is either to start up here with a big enough ball, or if the wind's right, we can get over. Then that's our best shot. We definitely want to try and get over the sand on our first shot and just drive towards the green. All right, hole number 2 in the Vintage Open is actually hole number 1 in Vineyard 8. All right, hole number 2 in the Vintage Open. It's hole number 1 in the Vineyard Acres. So there's 2 ways to come at this hole. You can do the black and the white. If you're doing the black line, when you get here, what I normally will do is spin the screen just a little bit to the right at the bottom so that I can see it at an angle, so that I can see where this is at. And I'm going to put on about 2.5 backspin. And I'm not really that concerned for the setup on where it's hitting right here. If I can get my pen to work. Right here. I'm looking at the second bounce, and I'm trying to get my second bounce right on the fringe. And I want it to be going, and then once I get my second bounce on the fringe, then I'm going to look at it from this direction so that I can line my shot up and go straight at the hole. But I want to keep that second bounce on that fringe and then make my adjustment down here. And we'll have to work throughout the week to find out where we're at on our red line with whatever ball we're using to make sure that we're making a proper wind adjustment. So normally I just do a max wind adjustment, especially when the wind's going this way and I'm pulling away from that. If the wind's blowing this way and I'm pulling towards the sand, what's difficult is in the higher divisions, you'll end up way out here, like out to the sand, in order to make the adjustment. And once you get your ball guide into or over, it's dealing with sand, it can be very, very tricky. So I try and stay, you know, like if I have to make an adjustment where I'm pulling myself out into the rough, I try and make a little bit less of an adjustment so that I want to make sure I end up out in this fairway so that I can make this bounce. Because even if you hit, there's an angle here, there's a little hill right here. If you can hit anywhere in that throat, anywhere in this area on that fringe, you're still going to end up about pin high. So you may not have the hole in one here, but you're going to end up pin high even if you make a little bit of an error down in the lower part. The other way to come at this is to bring a Saturn, and I can't remember which ball it is, but one of the balls that we can use, our red line's right here. And so we can bring a Saturn to be right on the other side of that red line so that we can make our wind adjustment and with maximum backspin go right at the cup and start off on the green and stay on the green. Now traditionally I've shot this shot since the hole originally came out, but I like in either one of these shots you have a great shot at hole in one with the black line. The white line you're dealing with backspin, and anytime you're dealing with backspin and you've got that whole backspin variable in there, I mean, they look pretty and they're always close, but your chances for hole in one are a little bit diminished. So the last tournament that this hole was in, I played it from over here on the white line, and I like that shot, but I think that you have a serious hole in one shot from over here if you work this shot. So I think in this tournament I'm going to use the black line, even though it's a little more dangerous. And if I don't like the results I'm getting, then I'll switch over to the white line. But I want to start off with the black line because I think either one or a hole in one, but I think the black line, you have a better shot at hole in one. All right, that was hole number 2. The Vintage Open. All right, let's check out hole number 3. So we're going to Vineyard Acres, hole number 4. And this is hole number 3 in the Vintage Open. So the last time we played this hole, and I'll dig out videos, and if I don't have videos for some of these holes, I'll try and catch them. But I was coming at this with, if I remember correctly, I'm coming at this with my extra mile, and I am trying to do on the black line, and I was using a Kingmaker, and I'm trying to get as much roll as I can, and I'm trying to get up here to where I'm in my minimum hornet to come right at it and do a rough bump and literally go right at the green and try and get that, pick up that albatross on a minimum long iron. So you don't have to get all the way out here. A lot of people, if they can just get into this range here, the key here is that you can go, well, I like it out here and I'm up in the right spot. It's all about where you're at in your red line with the clubs that you have and the ball that you bring. So this is going to be one of those combo holes where you're going to bring out a ball and say, well, I only need to use a quasar here because I don't mind doing a little bit of overpower to get me over. I got that shot. And then you end up back in here, and when you get up into this spot, the first few times, really be aware of where your red lines are at, trying to be at the best part of your club, like an easy number, like the max number or the minimum number. And so working out that red line wherever, for whatever clubs that you have in your bag, that's, every one of us are going to possibly bring something different, or we're going to have a slightly different shot, just depending on where your clubs are at. I want to get way up here into my minimum hornet, because anytime I can get into my hornet range, especially minimum hornet, I got a serious shot of making that. And the deal here is that you can get so far forward that you're actually in your maximum rapier. And the shot's actually a little bit better when you're in your minimum hornet, but the downside is if you get too far up here, you may be in your minimum rapier. So find the spot here for you. Now the other way to go at this is you can bring a bigger power ball and you can do the white line. And you can do this. You may or may, I'm not sure if you can do it in pro. I know that you can do it in rookie and you can do it in expert. Because from the second tees, I think pro just doesn't quite have enough wind to be able to carry over. Maybe it does. But I know in expert you can get over, and in rookie you can get over. So you're going to need to bring a little bit bigger ball, and you're trying to get up this throat right there. That's your area. So if you think about it, you're trying to get through the narrowest part of this entire course at the very end of a drive, and you have no control over that, where that end stuff goes. I mean, once it gets in that whatever trajectory it's in, everything out here was beautiful. It made the bounce, it made it through the fairway out here, everything was great. But once it gets to this little end thing, whatever trajectory you put it on, there ain't no fixing that. So if you look at where our tee box is to where that throat's at, and you draw a line, you know, you can't get out in front of that sand on your first bounce to get up there. You're going to be back in this area down here. So that means that you've now moved the trajectory like this, so you're going to have to put some kind of a curl to get up in that spot. And if you look at the direction of the curl that you just applied, this is Gordon. How you doing? Okay. What time? What day? Sometime next week would work good. When you say in the morning, how early in the morning? Okay. No, 8 o'clock will work. Yeah? Okay. All right, see you then. Thanks. Bye. All right, where was I at? Sorry about that. I got interrupted. So when you come into this hole, you're coming in it because you've now had to put curl on it in order to get it around the sand trap. So the ball is moving in this direction. And you're coming to this very narrow area here, and it's very easy because of the trajectory that you had to put on the ball in order to get it past all this, because you have to start over here. It's very easy to end up with your trajectory where you end up in the rough or the sand right here. So it's hard to get it up where you're all the way up on the green. I mean, it's possible. And I've gotten way up into this and not been on it. Wasn't on the putting surface, but very close chip. And it's a very difficult shot here because of the terrain, of how the green is sloped. It's got a very big backboard on it. So you can do the white shot and try and come at it from this direction, but don't be surprised if you find yourself in this rough or over in the sand, because that's the direction that your ball's going. You need to lay it up here in the front. So if you look at the difference, the reason I don't take that shot is because here's where I'm getting my ball in my long iron. If I get it all and I'm in my short iron, or if I get it all and I'm in my wedge, I'm here with a wedge on max club, and you're here with a wedge on minimum. And it's not quite one of those wedges that you can bump and run because of the way that the green is sloped. So you got to do more of the hop. It's not that big of an advantage. But there's a big downside over here, is that it's very easy to find yourself in this. And so from myself, when I'm on this hole, I want to take this consistent Albie shot every single time I come to this hole. I want to do whatever I have to consistently lay myself up out here, no risks, to get in this spot to give myself an Albie shot every single time I come to this hole. And every single time you come to this hole, if you give yourself that Albie shot, you're going to make Albies on this hole. But if you switch it up and you're trying to get up in the here and you end up on that rough, even though you're closer, that rough shot is very, very difficult. So I like to give myself the consistent shot. Now the approach to the green, if you're out in this area, so if you came this way, wherever you end up, that's what you got. And you know, if you got up into this and you're still on the fairway, you do have a decent shot. So you'll just have to deal with whatever this short shot is, whether it's in the fairway, the rough, or the sand, when you get down here. So if you're out here in this area shooting for the shot, there's two ways to come at it. The way that I use is I do a rough bump, and I'm bringing all of my accurate clubs. I'm bringing my backbone and my hornet and my rapier, and I'm trying to, right off of that first cut of rough, go right at the hole, and it doesn't take a whole lot of stuff. But depending on which one of those clubs you end up here with, it will take different stuff. So if you end up with your wedge, you're going to have to apply a little bit different backspin or topspin in order to make that shot happen. If you're in your short iron, you're going to use maybe a little bit different stuff. So each club's going to be a little different. So wherever you find yourself in your layup shot, so when I come to these holes and I say my first goal is to perfect my drive, because it doesn't really matter whether you go, wow, you know, like you're out here and you're making all these changes, but you can't consistently get out here. You were here, and then you were here, and then you were here, and then you were on the line, and you were like, wow, I really like that line. Yeah, well, the deal is now what you need to do if you really like that line is get consistently at that line. So instead of them being all scattered around, your line's here, and your shots are like this, you know, and they're within that range. Every shot's within that range. You know, you're trying to dial in on that line. That way, whatever ball you bring for your red lines and all that, it's just a setup shot. So if you do that setup shot and you're doing a rough bump, you'll be able to get those numbers down really, really quickly, because it'll narrow itself down into two clubs. The other way to come at this is you can bring your backspin clubs and bring your Saturn and your Thorn and bring all of your backspin stuff, and this has a very serious backboard on it. Now, I have found myself that if you're using the backspin shots, don't start your first bounce. Here's the line where the hole's at. That's the cup. That's the flag. Do not start with your first bounce on this side of that cup. And if you're in that area, it has to be really close. Like it may be on the other side of the line, but it's like right there, right at cup level. Because if you start low, below the hole, there's a flat area, so there's a serious hill coming down. So you got your green like this, and it's making its little wedge. Well, this is all hill. That's all hill coming down, and it goes all the way down to where the cup is, and so the cup kind of flattens out. So here's the cup. So all this stuff comes downhill, and here's the cup. But then right after the cup, it continues to go down. So if you miss this flat area here where the cup is at, and it hits this right here, you can very easily find yourself rolling off the green and ending up in this first cut of rough. And now you have, not only have you missed your second shot, but now your shot to try and secure your eagle is now from the rough. So make sure that if you're going to use backspin, that you start it off behind the hole. And I have found, because of the way that the slope works, is that it's better to be more towards the right than right behind the hole. Because if you hit it right behind the hole, once the backspin catches, it seems like it rolls off and it rolls more to the left. But if you hit it to the right and it starts rolling more to the left, then you can pick that back up because you started off to the right. So you have to work those numbers. And whenever I've done this with backspin, if you're using the backspin like that, it's max backspin. And then I'm getting up and I'm using all that backboard. I want it to pick up a lot of speed on that backboard, so it'll roll all the way down and roll through the flat, roll down that hill and through the flat to get to the hole. And I don't know that I've ever done that where I've gotten so much backspin that I've ended up rolling off. But I hardly ever start my first bounce on this side of the line. Normally I start off on that side. I want to be way up that hill. And I want to start as close down here as I can to the pin to get it so that it'll roll down. So there's a little bit of things about hole number 3 of the Vintage Open. That's hole number 4 in the Vineyard Acres. All right, thanks for watching that one. All right, we're on hole number 4 of the Vintage Open, and hole number 4 of the Vintage Open is hole number 8 of Vineyard Acres. And this shot right here with a excuse me. The deal that I see a lot of people in one-on-one play, when you come here, the deal is that you do not want to start anywhere down here. So if the club that you have doesn't have enough backspin for you to be able to start on the green and go to the hole, so that you're actually starting on the putting surface, not starting off on the fringe, not starting off on the first cut of the fairway, not starting off down here. None of this stuff is in play. You're starting off on the putting surface and you're going right to the hole. Whatever club you have in your bag that has enough backspin, that's the club that you're going to have to use. And you can pick shots down here and they'll take your regular bounces, but if you've got a club in your bag that can get you on the green, and then it's just a matter of you figuring out how much backspin in it, like if it's got an undeveloped ball guide, and you have to figure it out. So it'll be very easy for you to figure that out. Like, hey, if I come here and I started off and pick a spot down here, if I started off in this spot and I make, a 4 backspin adjustment or whatever it needs to be, and I make 1 right hand side spin and I put it in that spot and I aim towards it, that's going to end me up at pin high. So you can practice that shot. But at that point it's very easy because you've picked the consistent spot down here. So you come to the hole, you immediately put your ball in your consistent spot. You make your adjustment on your ball up here. And that takes hardly any time at all because you know what you're looking for, and then you can do the fine tuning once you get it done so that it's going right at the hole. And so this hole, with whatever clubs that you have in your bag, you can perfect it so that you're very close every single time you come here. But this hole, if you have backspin, this hole, you can dominate this hole. This is a great Guardian hole because with a Guardian you can start off right on here. If you have a high enough developed sniper, you can start off right on here. But this hole right here, for me in one-on-one play, I can dominate this hole with a Guardian because I can start off on the green and go right to the hole. All right, that was hole number 4 of the Vintage Open. All right, we're on hole number 5 of the Vintage Open. And hole number 5 of the Vintage Open is hole number 5 in Vineyard Acres. It's the only one that matches up. So they've changed this course, and I'm not sure how this is going to play in the tournament this time. But these trees right here, and the last time this was in a tournament, were not there. So it's hard in one-on-one play, especially from the second tees. Because in rookie, we can start off on this side of the line. So if you draw this line right here from the bottom of that sand trap, from this sand trap right here, if you draw that line, let me blow that area up just a little. First, let me show you the line here so you can see what we're dealing with. Here's our area. Hold on. Here's the area that we want to end up. We want to end up as close to the end down there as we can. And I also noticed that in the tournament there was several other trees out here that aren't on this map. That when you get way down into the bottom, there's a couple bushes that you're actually having to hit over, but they don't really come into play. So if you draw a line from the tee box to that area, these trees are seriously in play. So you have to miss this sand trap because you're right on that fringe. You have to come on this side of the sand trap. So you've got to get your ball to do this. You got to put this S curve in your ball. And it's very difficult when you're from the second tees to achieve that. So this is a tough shot from the second tees because you can't get as far out here as you can in rookie. So in rookie, we have a line that's from the bottom of this sand trap. And if we draw that line across, we can land somewhere right out in here. And so we don't have to try and put an S in it. We are starting off at that, trying to go to it. So this is one of those left-hand curl shots to try and get it out there. And it's also one of those deals where it's not a max topspin deal. In order to get out here, you had to do a max overpower shot. And so you're not going to need to put on all of your topspin. It's really going to be like 2 topspin. It's going to be a low number. And there's no need to get out here where you go, this might be one of those times where I got a little too much of it and it dribbles onto the rough. You don't need that much. So if you're that close, take a half a topspin off or a bar of topspin off, because it's not really worth, as long as you're on that side of that black line. If you're in this corner right here, in this little open triangle that I've got, if you're on the green right in that area or anywhere even on this line, you're good. And even if you're back here, there is a big difference between being on this side of the fairway close to the rough and on this side being close to the rough. That distance right there, while it's not a huge amount of distance, that distance for the second shot is big. Big. So this first shot is a setup shot. It's all about setup. You can't get everything out of your club because you will end up out here in the rough. You've got to set this shot up, and you want it to be in the right area, and the right area, once again, is this triangle. All of this. That's the right area. I mean, that's the best place to be. So if you're in that spot, you brought an extra mile. I would bring the way that the wind blows here, I would bring a 3 power ball. You're not going to be able to get any more out of this over here with a 3 power ball. And a 3 power ball will get you up here nicely if you land in that little triangle that we talked about. Now, if you find yourself not in that triangle and you find yourself out more in this area more often, then maybe you should bring a 4 power ball. And just make sure that you can end up in that area that you were consistently ending up in. Try not to say, well, hey, I got a 4 power ball, now I can get more. End up in that area, because that 4 power ball from back here is going to be like a 3 power ball from up here. You'll still be able to easily get up there. I'm going to bring a big dog because I don't have a Cataclysm, and I don't have I think I have a level 1 Cataclysm. But if you've got higher developed clubs and you've got a higher developed Cataclysm, it's got more distance than the big dog. The big dog, especially when it gets in higher levels, I mean, that's an awesome club. We can easily get it done. It has all kinds of stuff. It's got great topspin, curl, great distance to start off with. Has a little bit of backspin, so you can woe it up. And there's two ways to come at this green. So the last time I came here, traditionally what I've done is it's all been about distance. So if I find myself short, you can do a rough bump here. So if you find yourself, I take that back, not short. If you find yourself where you can get your red line up here, and you can get anywhere into this area, anywhere into this area, or anywhere into this rough, really. Ideally, you don't want to have to do any overpower, so you want to be more in this wedge right here. So when you think about the rough, right about the back side of that ball, if you can get your red line to that area and you can do a rough bump through this rough, and it's a fine line with the top spin to get you out to the hole. But you will typically find yourself either out here doing a short chip or right up by the pin. The other way you can do it is to come over and bounce from here and bounce over the sand and go straight at it. And really give yourself a shot here, not just to pick up a very tough eagle, but to possibly pick up an albatross. And there's a serious albatross shot on this hole, but it is very tricky because you've got to get your big dog. You've got to have that fine line between getting enough topspin in order to get you over from here, to get you over to this area, but not so much topspin that it blows past the green. So it's a very touchy shot. Both of these shots are very technical, whether you're hitting through the rough or whether you're hitting on the white line. And so when you get down here, you're going to need to figure out, and I'll put some videos up, and I'll try and shoot it. I've got videos from the last tournament, and I'll try and post and get those into a playlist so you can see it from both directions and see what I'm talking about. But as far as club choice on this, it's definitely, for me, going to be an extra mile. I'm probably going to bring a Kingmaker just because here it gives me more curl option. And on this second shot, it's going to knock the wind down because these are very technical shots where, the less wind I have to adjust out, the better. All right, that was hole number 5 of the Vintage Open. That's hole number 5 of the Vineyard Acres. Thanks for watching. All right, we're on hole number 6 of the Vintage Open, and hole number 6 of the Vintage Open is hole number 2 of Vineyard Acres. All right, so a couple things about this hole. When I normally play this hole, I try and, in tournaments, especially when we didn't have multiple bags, now it's easier. I always came to this hole with a quarterback, and my goal is to try and get right up at the top of this ridge. There's a ridge here, and on the other side of that ridge it starts to fall down, and usually if you're right at the top of it, that's a pretty good place to be, so you don't have to put all of the stuff on it. And the quarterback's super accurate to get you up this neck. Typically in tournaments, the wind that they give us, we have to adjust the wind, and we can't get through the trees, so we have to come at it from the opposite direction that we normally come from. So instead of having the wind with us and then we're pulling out the wind, we have to come at it from the other side, so the wind's still going this way and we have to look at this, and so it's opposite of how we normally do the wind adjustments. So just be aware of that when you adjust the wind out, you have to come at it so that you're looking at it this way, and then you're pushing it back towards instead of pulling it like we normally do. But my goal is to try and get up here. And this, I will tell you, the dangerous thing about hitting up to the top, and why it's so dangerous to hit this with an extra mile, is if you end up in the rough up here at the top, right here by the sand, or if you end up in the rough up here, or if you shoot it too far and you end up in the rough up here, you cannot make it from there to over here to get onto this little spit to get on the green. So you're done. And your best bet is to either pitch right back to where you're at. Don't try the overpower. Just pitch it right back to where you're at, because the next shot is the club that you brought. Or try and get down here at the very bottom so that you open up the throat and you've got a long iron shot from down here. So you will go into the next lowest club. So if you brought a really accurate long iron and you feel better with your long iron shot, You can shoot it down here if you end up in the rough up here. If you end up in the rough down here, so if you take the other line, which is coming out into this area, if you take this shot coming out into this area and ending up down here at the bottom, and that's the whole goal on this hole, is if you draw a line through the middle of the throat, you know, it's coming out here. So if you're down here in this fairway that you can still see down here in the bottom, or if you're right here towards the top, and the closer you are to that line, the better, then you've got a straighter in shot to the green, so you don't have to apply any curl. You can get the job done with just side spin. You want to try and be able to take curl out of the equation. Anytime you have to apply curl just to get it around the corner, then you have to move it out, and now you've got different variables involved. You got to give yourself a little bit of room. So if you can't make it all the way down into here, you know, if you do this lower shot, the benefit of doing the lower shot is that more than likely you're going to end up in trouble down here at the bottom. And you can make it from down here at the bottom up to this fairway pad to try and get onto the green and two. So you've got a lower chance of getting an eagle here. But this is a low percentage eagle hole to start off with. I did see in the last tournament that we played, some people were taking and hitting right here and bouncing completely over the sand. They weren't trying to come at it from this direction. They were coming at it from up here at the top, trying to bounce it over the sand and try and just barely dribble it, because there's a fine line here to get that bounce, enough topspin to get this bounce, but enough, not so much topspin that you blow out down here into the rough. There is a way to do this shot, and I'm not sure that we can do it in rookie because there's probably not enough wind, but there is a way to do this shot where you can do a max overpower hook and you can end up down here and blasting over so that you dribble out onto this, so you give yourself a very short chip for the eagle. But I'm not sure that we get enough wind in rookie to do that shot to get all the way over. I'll have to practice it, but I think you're landing down in this area right here with a max overpower hook and trying to get enough to do it. But I'm not. I'll have to look at that shot when we get on this hole to see if that's even possible. But it's a very technical shot on that first one. That's why I would bring a very accurate club just to try and get me up to the top of that hill. And then it's just a matter of fine-tuning whatever club, your most accurate driver that you have, so that you can get the ball with the topspin just to the top of that hill. All right, that was hole number 6 of the Vintage Open. Hole number 2 of Vineyard Acres. Thanks for watching. All right, we're on hole number 7 of the Vintage Open, which is hole number 9 of Vineyard Acres. All right. Now there's a bunch of different ways to play this. I'm not sure why it's not showing the lines here. Let's go to courses. Let's see why it's not showing the lines on these ones. Vineyard Acres. If we reload it. If I could spell today. T-U-V, Vineyard Acres. We're on hole number 7, which is hole number 9 of Vineyard Acres. And we're not getting the lines. So let's draw some lines on here. So line number 1 is coming out into this tip. So let's see if I can pull it up any more than I can. No. Okay, so going from the tee box up into this tip, that's the first line. So if we're on that line right there, our goal is, what we're trying to do is if we draw the line where that fairway comes, we're trying to cut that corner as much as we can. So the farther we get up here, our next shot's going to be to try and get all the way up to that tip. So we're trying to get into this area. So when we get on that shot, anything that we get that's, you know, if you look at how the green's set up there, anything that's above this line is now from where the green is with those trees. Anything up in this area, you got a fairly straight shot to the green, and it's easy to get around these trees. I mean, you could be down here and easily get around those trees. Okay, that's why you want to bring clubs with curl, so that you can wrap around. So whatever you bring for your wood and your long iron, and you want to make sure that you can get around those trees. So if you're on that shot over there, you're relegating yourself to one shot up to the top. So one shot to here, 2 shots to here, and then you're going to use this as the shot to try and sink it. So obviously the farther you can get up into that throat, and from here you've got a much straighter shot. So if you're down here and you're trying to achieve the same landing spot, now you've got to hook it around, and there's a row of trees right here. So you got to hook it around those trees in order to get up there. So if you want a straight shot to get up into that spot, that's why you'll see a lot of people do this. The other way to go at it is to get as close as you can down here to the front. And you'll have to, this is a setup shot. So you're going to bring whatever ball you're going to bring, and you're setting yourself up for the second shot. So you may bring a bigger ball than what you need for this. You may bring a 4-power ball. If you're going to jump to a 5-power ball, there is a different shot. So if you're down in this area and you've got a 3 or a 4-power ball, and you're definitely going to want to bring the biggest ball that you can bring, because your next club is going to be a big dog. And with a big dog, if you're way up here in the front, so if you're way up here in the front, your next shot's going to be somewhere out in this area right here, where your red line's going to be somewhere out in this area. And you're trying to get your ball around the corner as much as you can so that you have an absolutely straight shot, no trees, no obstructions, no nothing, and you're in your short iron range. And so you can be in your short iron range taking this shot for eagle, as opposed to being over here in this corner taking it with a wood. So if you can get out into this area, you're going to be in your long iron range if you duff out in here. So whatever clubs you bring, and if you're in your long iron range, you're apt to be in a bit of trouble where you're having to contend with these trees. So you're going to be somewhere out in this range. You know, you may be in this top corner, or you may be in this throat right here trying to get around the trees. And so when I bring my clubs here, I'm bringing my most accurate short iron, because if I'm in my short iron range, I'm in a good spot. I want to be able to go right out, so I'm going to bring a Hornet. And then I'm going to bring my most versatile long iron, which in my case is going to be a Saturn, because it's got lots of side spin, top spin, back spin. It's not the most accurate club in my bag at 2 per ring, but it's got all the stuff. So if I end up in the lower part of the long iron range where I have to get around the trees, I got the right club. If I end up in the higher part, the backbone might have been a little bit better, but I can still get the job done with the Saturn. But if I'm down here lower and I brought a backbone, I might not be able to get around those trees and get on. So the backbone could hurt me on one side, but the Saturn, there's no downside to it. And then wood, I'm definitely going to want to bring an accurate wood, and I'm going to want to bring a wood that's got, if I end up low down here, I'm going to need to get around these trees, so I want to make sure it has curl. This shot right here, if you're in one-on-one play and you're just coming out here and you've got a bag that's set up where it's the accurate bag, you can easily get out into this area with a quarterback, and you're going to be using max top spin. You can easily get out into this area so that you can work your way up here, and you're on in 3, and it's a pretty easy shot if you can make this drive. The drive is the key, because you don't have to get all the way up this finger, okay, but you want to get up this finger so that you can make it around that corner and try and get as high as you can up in that opening, so that you open the green up from these trees. But I think in tournament play, you're going to see people hitting down here and then doing the long iron or the wood shot with the big dog, trying to get up into their short iron range. The other way you can go at this is you can go with a max overpower with a 5-power ball. And in rookie, we may or may not have enough wind. In expert, you probably have a much better shot at doing this, where you can get over here in 1. And so if you get over here in 1, and you come at this the same way with a big club that's got lots of curl, you could potentially, instead of being in a short iron range, you have the potential of getting in minimum short iron, maximum rapier, or even could be getting on. There is a backboard here, so you can swing that club around and wrap it around these trees and use that backboard to your advantage. So it opens up some possibilities if you can get over here on the fairway and 1. But it's a very risky shot, and what you'll find a lot of times is that you made it part of the way. And you made it 3/4 of the way through, so you can, if you're 3/4 of the way through, the cool thing is if you have Nirvana, you can go from, if you make somewhere past this line, if you're on this side of the line, with a Nirvana, your landing spot's going to be right in here. So you can still, if you stay high, so that because the lower you pinch it, you keep these trees in play. But if you push it out this direction, you're opening up the throat. You're making this shot longer, but you're making this shot so that you might be able to go right at the pin instead of having to do any curl to get it around the trees. So if you find yourself in the rough out here, if you do this overpower shot and you're trying to get your ball out here, if you do this, you definitely want to make sure that whatever rough iron you have is the longest one in your bag. So if this might be a great hole to bring an Amazon if this is the shot you're doing. It's not going to give you a lot of ball guide, but it has a lot of stuff, you know, where we could try and, you know, if you can get out here far enough with it to wrap it around that corner, you know, I mean, whatever club it happens to be, it doesn't have to have a lot of ball guide. You're just trying to get out into this area. You didn't get to your optimal spot. And this is a great shot. I've done this shot before, but what I found on this shot was a lot of times it was maybe a 50-50. Half the times I ended up in the rough, and half the time I ended up here. And when I ended up here, it was a great shot. When I ended up here, I had to do this rough iron shot, and it wasn't so great. And it was hard to get it to the point where it would clear it, where I was up here. Whereas when I hit down into here, if I brought a big dog, and I brought the right ball, and I got this shot down from here, I could get to here almost every time. And so the only variable was whether or not I could capitalize on this short iron shot. And down here it was like a 50-50 deal on whether or not I was going to get to the same area. So I decided that it wasn't worth the risk of going out here because the reward wasn't, you know, it wasn't that big of an advantage. Alright, that was hole number 7 of the Vintage Open. Hole number 9 of Vineyard Acres. Thanks for watching. Alright, we're on hole number 8 of the Vintage Open, which is hole number 6 of Vineyard Acres. And this is one of those par 3s, and I can't remember I think we come at this, I'm not sure if we come at it with a Saturn or with a long iron or a wood. So it's either going to be, for me, it's either going to be a sniper or a backbone. And I think we're landing down into this area down here, and we're doing the bounce on, and it does have an irregular bounce that goes with it, but I'm going to have to get on this hole. It's been a long time since I played this par 3, and so I'll have to get on there. I don't remember the holes really well. I know them when I'm playing them or if I'm looking at them. So I think the way that we play this hole, if I remember correctly, is we're somewhere down, you know, like our landing spot somewhere down in this area. And depending on the ball that we have and the club that we're using, you know, once we find that spot down here that, hey, I want to be in this spot and I'm going to use, you know, 3.5 or 2.5 backspin or 1 topspin or whatever it happens to be. And I think that this hole, actually, you're going to start off a little to the left and it actually takes an irregular bounce to the right, if I remember correctly. But my first goal here is to pay real big attention to this. Okay, this is when I'm setting up these par 3s and I'm trying to dial it in, because this is a hole that we can get hole-in-one on. You have a serious shot here. So my first goal is to try and find the club-ball combo where my red line, where I'm down in the area where whatever wind we have in the tournament, I can adjust the wind out and I'm right dead at the red line. So that means that I'll be in my minimum club. So if it's possible for me to be in my minimum club, then this is where I want to be. I want to be right at minimum. If it's not possible, then I want to try and get to maximum. So I want my number to be a pure number. And I really like it when I can be at a minimum number. You know, because if I'm in my Hornet, it's just a lot more accurate when it's at minimum club. So that's goal number 1 when I come to this hole, is to find out where I need to be at down here to be at minimum club. And then I can start making my adjustments. Then I can start fine-tuning those adjustments and start dialing in like artillery. And I know down here I'll pick a consistent spot where the white ring's up against this rough down here. I'll pick a spot so that every time we start off in the relatively close area to where we want to be, so we're not having to make huge adjustments every time. Alright, that was hole number 7. Excuse me, that was hole number 8 of the Vintage Open. Hole number 6 of the Vineyard Acres. Thanks for watching. Alright, we're on hole number 9 of the Vintage Open tournament, which is hole number 7 at Vineyard Acres. So we're ending up on a par 4. Man, I can't remember this hole. Okay, I remember this hole now. So there are some overpowered shots that you can do on this hole, and there used to not be so many par 4 balls, and so the only time you could ever do shots like this was with a par 5 ball, and par 5 balls don't come around every day. So there's some overpowered shots where you're actually hitting it through the trees out here, and you're actually trying to land out in this area, and you're trying to get it so that when your ball comes out, it's moving towards the sand. So when you're doing this shot, you're actually out here in your short iron, long iron range, somewhere out in this area, okay, by blasting through the trees like that. You can also clip this corner. If you bring a bigger ball, you can come out here and land and try and clip the corner so that you're actually coming out onto the green somewhere in this area right here with forward momentum, so that you're landing in this area. The traditional shot on this is to get your first landing somewhere up here as close to this rough as possible and end up down in this area with the shot to the green. But you're going to have to contend with some stuff on the shot to the green, but this is the traditional shot. If you end up short up here, it's not necessarily a bad thing if you end up at the top, because now you can follow it in like this to come in, where you can use the backbone and you can kind of avoid the sand down here, because there is a serious backboard here. So if you ended up down in this area, let me zoom in a little bit on this. And let's talk about the drive shot here. So if you're doing this drive shot, and traditionally this is the drive shot that I will do, because I have a shot down here and I like this shot. So I mean, you can get advantages if you're up here, but unless this advantage right here gets me on the green, I don't know if I would be any more apt to make this shot here than I will be to make this shot here. Maybe. We'll have to see what some of these newer balls will achieve and what kind of distances we can get out here on making the shot. Now, if you're an expert, you definitely want to look at these shots out here and see what you have the equipment to achieve, because this will give you a leg up. Because if you can get into a lower ball when you've got a 10-mile-an-hour wind coming into the green, or a lower club, it's going to make a big difference. But in rookie, I'm not sure necessarily, because if you get caught up in the rough out here, you make a hole that you have a shot at every time by being out here. Once again, every single time, if you're in the same spot out here, every single time you got the same shot, and you can start dialing this shot in, as opposed to being out here and one time you ended up making it good and you're here, and one time you ended up awesome and you're here, and the next time you ended up in the rough. I want to make this more consistent shot out here, because this is just a setup shot. Okay, the shot that counts is this next shot, and being able to get this shot practiced in and do it over and over so that you can dial it in will make it so that on this, when you get to this hole, you go, okay, hey, I got this, and you give yourself that shot every time. You know, when it does go in, that's an easy win. So on this, in order to achieve this shot down here, you're going to land somewhere in here, and I'm trying to pinch up as high as I can up to this rough. But I want to give myself enough room so if I hit it great on the inside, I'm not just in the rough. But the higher up you are on the hill looks like this. So here's the sand, and then here's the fairway, and you can see this little shadow right here where it's hilly. So here's the sand, and here's the fairway, and then it goes up the hill. So when you're hitting this hole, when I'm hitting this hole, I'm trying to land as close to the top of the hill as I can, because that's where it's the steepest. So it's flatter up here actually. I'm not getting as involved in the slope. And the other thing I'm doing is when I hit this shot, I'm putting on right hand side spin, because as soon as the ball hits this first spot up on this hill, because of the hillside, it wants to immediately flatten out and wants to do this to the left. And I want to counteract that, because this side spin doesn't take effect until the ball touches the ground. So when the ball touches the ground, it's got side spin jerking it this way, and it's got the natural course wanting to force it this way, and the ball tends to shoot out straight. And it ends up right out in this area, and that's what we're looking for. And what we don't want to be is long here. You still have a shot if you have a Nirvana long, but you'll end up having to hit off of this little spit down here, and it sucks. It's a super steep hill, so ideally you don't want to hit it long. It's better to be a little short here than it is to ever be long. You know, because there is an area out here that you can be in that anything in this area works, so it doesn't have to be all the way to the end, and you'll have to find that area for your clubs. And the next club I want to bring is from this spot out here. If you bring a big ball from this spot, my red line for my Guardian is going to be right about there. So I've got my entire Guardian here that I can use this backboard, and it is a serious backboard. I mean, look at how steep this hill is coming in here. So you can use that backboard where you actually ride up the top of that backboard with a max backspin shot and bring it back down towards the hole. And what the deal is that I take all of this sand and all of these traps, all of this stuff completely out of play, because I start off on the green, I roll up the hill, and it rolls right back down on the green. I never put any of that stuff into play. Now, some people will come to this hole, and on this hillside right here, this is what I'm talking about. If you hit out there in the rough, you may be able to make it into this area, you know, somewhere in this area where you could do a rough bump to try and rough bump it onto the green. The difficulty here is not the rough bump. The difficulty is the terrain, because as steep as this is right here, it's not quite that steep, but it's pretty close to that steep from right about here all the way down to here. So it rolls down this hill really quick. So if you hit this face at the wrong angle to try and get a pop up in the air with forward momentum to try and pop you up on the green, what may happen is that it'll hit that area and go straight up in the air and roll and come right back down, and then roll back into the sand or roll back further down into the rough. So it's a super dangerous shot over here. Ideally, if you find yourself having to shoot this shot over here, start down low and put on more topspin, because you can't go wrong with topspin on this hole. If you can get it so that your ball bounces over into this area and it's got topspin, it's going to roll onto the green or roll over to this backboard, and in a worst case scenario maybe get caught up here on the fringe, but you'll still have a shot there. But my preferred way to play it is to go out into this area, try and get your first landing zone right here. That's our setup. Be consistent. No overpower stuff, just try and get it out there. And then second shot, Guardian, right onto the green, trying to backspin it into the hole. The other way, if you don't have a developed club to do this green shot, other than doing this face bump, is to bring the ball around this way. Especially if you have a club like a hammerhead or a hornet or a hammerhead or a sniper, one of those clubs that's got a lot of curl and got a lot of topspin. You can start off down here, even if your red line's down in here, and with max, this is as far as you can make it. You can start off down here and putting on max topspin. You can get your second bounce somewhere in this area so that you're moving in this direction. And start off just so that your second bounce, your first bounce, here's your red line. Your first bounce is right in here. And so you can make it so that your second bounce is right there, or you can make it so your second bounce is right there. This outside one will be better because you're going to apply curl on this, so it's better for you to excuse me, give yourself this distance so that when you apply the curl, it'll bring it back to this spot. If you start in this spot and you apply curl, what's going to happen is now you put all of this stuff right here into play. So we want to it's wide open over here on the right. So if you're coming in at it from the bottom down here, the mistake that you can make is to stay too low. Okay, you're going to apply curl to it. So make sure that your second bounce is high. Not so high that it's in the rough, but you want it to be, like a ring away from the rough. So when you apply that curl, you can bring it back into this direction, and it has room down here to maneuver. And you don't really need to curl. You're not really trying to necessarily curl it directly to the hole. Depending on how hot you're having to come in here, you're curling it around this backboard, and so you can skip it across this entire backboard if you got enough topspin and speed. But that's a shot that, once again, if you come here and you don't have a high enough developed Guardian, or you're not bringing a big enough ball because you don't have them in your collection to be able to backspin it right onto the green, and you got to come at it in a traditional way, and you don't like this hill face, I don't like this hill face, so if I couldn't backspin it onto the green, I would come at it from this direction. But you can look at these shots that hit you over the trees to put you out here. I'm just not sure that the advantage of doing that is worth the risk of ever getting caught up out here, when this shot down here is in every single time I at least have a shot. All right, that was hole number 9 of the Vintage Open in the Vineyard Acres tournament, or Vineyard Acres courses. Hopefully everybody will, I'll try and get out there right now. I'm going to go out and try and play some holes and try and put together, look through some of the tournaments that these holes have been in, and find times when I play, especially in tournament play, and see which holes I have already, and then I'll go out there and try and film the ones I don't have. Hopefully everybody has a great tournament. Thanks for watching.